Pardon me?
Are you gonna drink your booze or give it to me?
I'm gonna drink it. You got it here.
Good evening, everyone. This is the pre-council meeting of the City of Joliet on December 14th, 2020 at 5:30 with Mayor Bob Odekirk presiding.
We'll begin with roll call. Mayor Odekirk.
Here.
Councilwoman Gavin.
I'm here.
Councilman Hug.
Here.
Councilman Landy.
Here.
Councilman Morris.
Here.
Councilman Mudrin.
Here.
Councilwoman Coleman.
Here.
Councilwoman Reardon.
Here.
Councilman Turk.
Here.
There are no presentations this evening, so the first item is citizens to be heard. There is no one present that would like to speak under this item this evening. However, we do have one person who registered to be called. His name is Eric Deshawn. Doris?
You have Eric Deshawn on the phone.
Eric, it's Mayor Odekirk. Can you give your name, address, and comment, please?
Yes, my name is Eric Deshawn Doris, 624 Franklin Street, Joliet, Illinois. I'm actually calling to comment on the reduction of the budget for Bicentennial Park. So I thank you right now for your time during these unprecedented times in your leadership. I do understand that there is a plan to partially reduce budget at Bicentennial Park with it, and the idea is to ask that those are restored, and that we would have programming at Bicentennial Park in the summer and the fall months of 2021. In addition to that, I was also recommending that the council consider that the employees of Bicentennial Park be assigned to positions that directly support the recovery of Joliet's art and culture sector. This is especially important as we near the approval of the COVID-19 vaccines and the eventual reopening of the venues and stages and cultural institutions across the city. Bicentennial Park staff are currently the only positions in the city government that are currently dedicated to the arts and cultural sector. And this council has the opportunity to think with creativity and innovation about how these staff members can support that recovery during the months that the park is closed. As you know, the creative economy in Illinois has already sustained significant economic losses due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In a report from Americans from the Arts, we found that since March 2020, cultural institutions in Illinois have reported more than $12 million in lost revenue. 96% of cultural organizations in Illinois have canceled events, and more than 2,700 employees in the arts and cultural sector have been laid off or furloughed throughout the state. In spite of these losses, we do know that a vibrant creative sector is necessary to restoring Joliet and all of Illinois' overall economy. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, arts and cultural institutions in Illinois supported more than 110,000 jobs, generated over $4 billion in economic activity, and brought in nearly $250 million in local government revenue. Continued investment in institutions like Bicentennial Park is a proven and reliable contributor to our local economy. The estimated cost of reopening the arts and cultural sector will require ongoing support from both private and public sectors. However, the current proposal to defund Bicentennial Park's programming and reassign its staff to non-specific roles does not reflect the planning and support needed to ensure a full economic recovery of the arts, nor does it acknowledge the arts' greater impact on our community's recovery as a whole. I hope you'll consider these recommendations before you vote, And please feel free to contact me if you have any questions between now and tomorrow's meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jim, along those lines, before we start, I don't know if there's gonna be any modifications to the budget or not, but there did seem to be in this last week, a fair amount of confusion out there. A lot of people were under the impression, were told that your proposal was to permanently close the park. I know that's not true, but specifically to what Mr. Doris just said, what would happen if we're able to reopen in the summer or in the fall? Hopefully, we get to that point. What would happen with your proposal at that point?
Well, at the moment, as it was proposed, there was nobody, there are 4 employees there. None of them would be laid off. They would be reassigned to other positions and responsibilities within the city. The building would, be heated, cooled, and property, the lawn maintained throughout the year, and that would remain in the budget. If at some time council wanted to reopen full activities there, those people would go back to those responsibilities full-time.
And what would we do with the unbudgeted money then? That we should
Well,
expect?
the positions that they would be moving into were in other department areas. So they would, and those expenditures are already in the budget. You would have to amend the budget at some point and put money back in to fund by-park operations, though, if that's what you desire.
Mayor,
Yes.
if I might comment, and, Jim Gaddotti can comment on this too, but actually it's in conversations that he's had in front of us. The biggest thing, the most important thing right now when it comes to protecting our credit rating is to balance the budget, which we can do, without drawing any reserve. Even in the years that we had extra reserves left over above and beyond. So people have to understand, and it's very important to protect the community's rating. We have a very good bond rating. Also, too, Jim, you had said when you originally rolled out, essentially what we're doing here for sure is we're cutting, for the most part, or moving the budgeted salaries and benefits and such away from the by-park column into the regular city, and they're actually filling positions that would be filled even if they stayed there. Now, people have to remember, they can't do any indoor activities right now by state order, so it made sense to move them. But you had made a comment, and you said if there's any, people, private rentals, that those could move forward, right?
Yes.
And that would include, for instance, like the Drama Guild, which is a private entity. We would just have to figure out the volunteerism, if you will, in the interim for security and such, and work out the logistical details. It's not a complete shutdown. The complete shutdown currently has to do with the state mandate from the governor.
True. Yes.
Okay.
And Mayor, first thing after public comments is our public hearing on the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, just one more thing too. As I was explaining and writing in all these emails I've been getting about Bicentennial Park, I mean, the Rialto is closed, but those employees have been furloughed. And that's one of the big entertainment centers that we have here. And I understand about Bicentennial Park. I've been down there many, many, many times. And this is just a temporary thing. I said, even Broadway is closed, for heaven's sake. But this is our little theater. Everybody loves it. It's affordable entertainment. But again, right now, you can't be inside for anything. And I think down the road, we'll be able to look at it and maybe amend the budget if we have to do so. But right now, we can't do anything inside. So, I just hope that folks will bear with us.
Yes.
I also was looking, and I talked to Jim about this, at the budget, that as it will end this year, and the costs for the employees, their FICA, their Medicare, their, all the costs for that, which we would be keeping, and you stated that we worked it into the budget. If you take that and the costs of what it will take to keep, the utilities and maintain, really the total difference is $93,000. And so when we are able to reopen, it's not like we're going to have the hit of $400,000. It's more like 93.
The other thing is that Mr. Gaddotti will be keeping a close eye on our revenue side. There's a potential another stimulus package coming out of the federal government. If COVID gets under control, the casinos will reopen. There's a number of factors that we'll be keeping a close eye on.
Mayor, and Jim, when you and I had discussed it, the one question I had asked you was, if we didn't move the bike park, if we left the bike park employees at Bar Park, would we be filling? Are they critical enough or important enough to fill? And you said, yes, we'd still be filling
Yes,
the positions. So that's where the 400,000 in savings temporarily comes from.
Right.
Is we're paying them the bike park money. When they go back to bike park, we'll have to also increase the budget to replace them in the positions they filled.
that's correct.
Okay.
And one more thing too, I should say, one of the board members did contact me and they're on board with what we're doing right now, so we're good.
So there is no one else under citizens to be heard this evening. So before the city manager discusses the other items, we will move on to the public hearing that's being held this evening, and that's for the proposed 2021 budget. So we will let the record show that the public hearing is now open and comments would be in order at this time.
The hearing's open. If anyone in the next room wants to speak on on this public hearing matter, please step forward.
There is no one here that would like to speak under the public hearing, and no one registered to be called during this section this evening.
Okay, thank you.
To let the record show that the hearing is now closed. So we'll pass it to the city manager to discuss the items that will be addressed tomorrow night.
Well, before we get to the items on the agenda, since nobody was here for public comment, tonight is the night that if you desired to fund by park, you would have to take that money from our fund balance, and Mr. Gadati could adjust the budget for your approval tomorrow night. Otherwise, we will go ahead and leave the agenda the way it is, the proposed budget the way it is, and proceed for your approval tomorrow evening.
Mayor,
Yes,
Larry, when you and I talked the other day, you had talked about pulling the bike park out separately and voting on it.
Right.
And I think that's a good idea, because I've talked to the president of their board, and I think that's the only board member I talked to.
Me too.
And he's got some concerns. And you know, I just was concerned, you know, there's so many people down there, it's affordable entertainment, and if it's closed, you know, even for that short a period of time, the perception is it may never open, who knows? So I think that's what the people's are concerned is. I'd like to see it put back in the budget, but if, can we take some kind of a vote tonight, whether we want it in the budget or not? I don't know.
That's fine. Well, Mr. Gadati, I saw him out in the hallway.
And
Thought I
Mayor,
did.
while we're waiting for Jim to come up here, one thing I just want to repeat and remind each one of us, to put it in the budget by drawing off the reserve as a matter of budget up front could harm our rating.
Well-
What we add later in the year is a separate issue.
Correct.
So, I mean,
However,
we need, they're closed right now for all intents and purposes. They're doing a virtual version of the gnomes, you know, winter, you know, I think they're doing a virtual of the drunken gnomes too for the adults, you
Yeah,
know,
are they?
and I get that. And I understand, you know, I used to be part of community theater for about a decade, so I have the right to say this. When you get a bunch of us together,
You are the last party in the
there will be
conference.
some drama.
You will hear
some emotion
silence
on
until the
issue.
conference
Wait, Larry, I
begins.
can't hear you.
Line muted.
Is somebody coming on? No? So I really want us to consider the fact that we currently have a balanced budget, and that's fantastic for our bond rating as it's reevaluated next year.
it is. In my discussions with the city manager, he said this is the first year we have not used reserve funds to balance the budget.
Right.
So, Jim, you think that amount of money will affect our bond rating?
Yes,
It will.
we have had a deficit. This year I met with Standard & Poor's about 10 times about using our fund balance. And they also mentioned that we did budget to use some fund balance this year. Adding another year, we probably would go down to triple B. Again, we could amend the budget later on if a revenue source could come on. We could amend the budget for outdoor activity, for example, use volunteerism, maybe the admissions, and run a show that would pay for itself. So I do believe that we probably will be looking at a bond issue in 2021 for the Rethink Water program. So it could be quite costly to get just one tick down if we went down from AA+ to BBB. I'm
Well, is
hoping
it-
for $7 million stimulus package, then we could add everything back. So, again, we have not removed the positions, we have removed the funding for them. So should funding come in one source or another, I hope the casinos open up in February 100%. If you remember, we only budgeted 50%, so.
So if the casinos open before July 1st, we're ahead of the game then?
Correct.
So, Mayor, is it safe to say that this council has consensus to revisit the budget to open by Park back up? I mean, it's not gonna be closed permanently, and I know many, many people are upset. We keep saying temporary, but Rialto is temporary, that will reopen, so is that safe to say that we could do that as a council, as a whole? I'm not speaking for anybody, I'm asking you.
I think so, for me.
I can certainly see revisiting the budget to amend the budget to allow if things change and from Jim's mouth to God's ear on that $7 million, but I think that would, we could do that.
Mayor?
Yes.
If we look at
Okay,
it this way, that's a, a good question, a fair question, Councilwoman. I will give my word as one member out of the 9 members of this council, not for a moment. And I think I speak for Jim. Was this something that we considered permanent? If we were to draw off money from the reserve and we were to spend millions extra in the ensuing years for our bond folks, then we'd have to permanently cut something because you only collect so much money. We would be paying more for our debt service because of our lowered bond rating, correct, Jim?
Correct.
So actually, right now, we can't do anything inside because of the governor's mandate. If the casinos aren't open in February or in April or in May, neither will any of the theaters be allowed to be open under the governor's mandate. So I think this is the right course to take, and I think we can assure the people, especially those directly involved in putting on the shows and those that enjoy watching them, this is not even close to a permanent, and it's not even a complete shutdown. We're gonna, like you said, like you and I have said, Jim, we're gonna be leaning on, when the opportunity arises, volunteerism, to get some of the amateur programs there. We may not get the professional programming of the hiring with the contracts that you're gonna get with a full-time staff, but the drama guild, the people like that, the improv club.
Well, the kids too, they
Right.
they like it too.
And I bet you that the community of thespians in Joliet come this summer, if it's allowed to be done, but they need to volunteer to a certain level, we'll still put together some form of camp if it's allowed, even if we don't have full-timers yet. It'll be great when we get back to the full-timers, but we have to protect our bond rating.
Mayor,
Yes.
I just want to reiterate what Jim told us all, that, I mean, there's no capital expenditures. There's a whole lot of other areas that we didn't spend money on, and it wasn't enough to not use fund balance. And that's why I included by park. And so if we get a stimulus package, if the gaming revenue comes back, our other revenues come back, it's not just by park we want to add back. There's capital improvement projects and a number of purchases we wanted to put in the proposed budget, but we didn't want to use fund balance because of what Wall Street's been telling Mr. Gaddotti this past year.
Well, as a member of the finance committee, I'll be a broken record, Mr. Gaddotti, once we start bouncing back a bit. So I will certainly be asking for the funds.
Are you looking for questions or comments now?
Well, based on what I've heard, I think we'll leave the agenda the way it is and consider it tomorrow evening.
So do we have 100% people on board with that one then? Pat, I didn't hear from you.
I'm okay with it.
Mr. Landy? Mr. Landy?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Nice Christmas present, everyone.
I need to make a call tomorrow to the board chairman to talk to him,
Tomorrow?
because, yeah.
Well, I talked to him too. He was,
Yeah,
is there a change?
I talked to him, I'd like to talk to him again because I heard something different, so,
Okay.
okay.
I have a sneaky suspicion Mr. Barnes is watching right now.
Okay.
With that, I'll review tomorrow night's agenda. consent agenda is pretty academic. We've got the application, item 647 is a drive-through permit for the gas and wash car wash at Theodore. As you know, this was approved as a site plan already, and it's already under construction. They are just adding the car wash as part of this permit. And then I mentioned to you, I think in an email, if before we start the council meeting tomorrow night, if a motion could be made prior to approving the agenda to move our public hearing on the North Point issue, at least after ordinances, resolutions, and you can have it before or after bids and contracts, but I think we'll get through the agenda pretty quick and get to that public hearing. So item 651 is the temporary construction easement for Hollywood Road at Hobalt. Cost us all of $10. I think it's the cheapest easement we've ever had for construction of this project. And then items 652, 653, 654, 655 are all ordinances regarding adoption of the annual budget. We've given you two options as under the 652, which is just adopting it outright. There's a second motion with the option of including the Joliet Prison and the Rialto Theater, otherwise known as Will County Metropolitan Exhibition and Auditorium Authority. So, under resolutions, item 657, the city has, as you may know, was built years ago, and underneath our downtown sidewalks are vaults. And typically these were used as coal bins where the coal truck could come in and just dump down these chutes into a space underneath the sidewalks in front of the buildings in the downtown area. And oftentimes we come across these only when there's a redevelopment project and somebody says, hey, wait a minute, there's a big empty space down here. So we've never had a policy on who would be responsible for repairing those sidewalks. And so that's what's being proposed under this resolution. Item 658 is our less than lethal program. Just to review that a little bit. This is, we're going to use Axon, who was here doing a presentation, as you know. We finished phase one. The second phase of the department is to update our strategic software platform. Right now, we've got 183 tasers used by officers. 72 will be out of their useful life in 12 months, and all of the tasers will be out of their useful life in the next 2 years. So this is part of a program that will, again, a single source vendor, the digital evidence on this and the software for every officer to have the option of utilizing a taser, the less than lethal option versus using their sidearm. Any questions? Item 659 is the execution of an incentive agreement with Tony's Fresh Market to be located at 1801 West Jefferson, which is the former Kmart property. Tony's is purchasing the entire property there, and he plans to use the western portion of it, 70,000 square feet of that Kmart building for Tony's Fresh Market. That will employ 100 full-time people, 150 part-time people. The remaining 30,000 square feet of that building will be another complementary commercial use of the property. And there are also a couple of outlots right on Jefferson. One is vacant for another potential new building there, just north of the Checkers. The anticipated development cost, investment rather, by Tony's is in excess of $20 million. There is extensive work that needs to be done there, including a new roof, HVAC, and facade, exterior, and the entire interior needs to be overhauled as well. So what is proposed is a 50% sales tax rebate. And in this case, it would be all sales tax on the property, including what goes into that 30,000 square foot portion that will be facing Larkin, and the outlots up front there. It's for $3.5 million for a maximum of 20 years, and based on our estimates from this investment, they should get total incentive reimbursement within 15 years. This represents 17.5% of the total project cost, which is a percentage that's consistent with the other incentive programs that we've given to different developers within the city. The other thing to keep in mind is we anticipate the property tax just on that building alone for the city alone going from about $8,500 to $22,000 a year. You also have a correspondence. They would have had a representative here this evening to answer any questions you had, but they've provided a letter from the VP of Corporate Operations that they're available by phone, so you can give them a call personally tomorrow if you have any specific questions about the project or the investment. Any questions on this item?
Mayor?
Yeah,
The other thing I would point out is we have a policy here with economic development not to exceed 20% of, in incentives. There will be no TIF incentives because that property doesn't fall inside any TIF. That's why it's sales tax. As Jim pointed out, it's 20 years maximum, but it's also 3.5 million maximum. So it can happen sooner. And I don't remember the comparables. Do you remember, Jim, or does Derek want to tell us? Actually, this is the third new store that they've got out there to open up. They got one in Round Lake Beach, I think, and somewhere else.
Yes.
Our deal was much smaller than the other ones, as far as how many incentives we're giving. So we got to give credit to those involved in the negotiating process. I believe one was $6.5 million in incentives, another one was 4.5 to 5 million.
Berwyn gave 5.2 million, and so did Burbank over a 25-year period.
Right.
So,
and we're giving 3.5 million. So it's important, and it meets our criteria. It comes in at 17% of the total project cost is what the incentives are. It's going to be great for the people that live closer to that. They won't be traveling all the way to my district now to go to Tony's because we'll have their own. And this is going to be a slightly larger Tony's than the one I have in District 1.
the rest of the agenda is award of contracts and amendments, change orders, and all of these will go to committee before consideration tomorrow night.
Jim, if I can we go back to 64920 for a minute?
Yes.
I was going to ask Mr. Regis to step up. This stems from a phone call I got from a media outlet on Friday about, I guess, I don't know if it's the newest or latest claim, but the accusation that the North Point project is going to be or interfere with the the Veteran Cemetery. So I think Mr. Regis did a little deep dive into this today. If you could give some facts in regards to the proximity to the cemetery and the proximity to Midday-Wind, because I know there's a lot of accusations flying about this. It'd be nice to debunk some of this.
Sure, it's important that everyone has accurate information about this, and a lot of the I don't know, the folklore that's developed about this thing is simply inaccurate, and unfortunately, it's not accuracies that get repeated, it's inaccuracies. So with regard to Medewin, all I did was look at a map and go on Google Earth and measure distances between things. That's how I arrived at these figures. With regard to Medewin, the nearest North Point parcel is 2,600 feet, so that's a half mile from Medewin. So with regard to the cemetery, somebody made the statement, it was repeated more than once at the last meeting we had, the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Somebody said, would you build a warehouse next to Arlington National Cemetery? That's a very bizarre statement, because, I mean, the answer is no, because we can't do that. But if you look at Arlington National Cemetery, it's in a developed area. It's not in a rural area at all, and there are buildings encroaching all around that cemetery. But the fact of the matter is that with regard to the city of Joliet and what we propose to do with the North Point annexations, the nearest warehouse development to the Abraham Lincoln National Cemetery, if you do a line as the crow flies, is 11,000 feet. That's more than 2 miles away from the entrance to the cemetery. And again, if the question is, would we build a warehouse next to Abraham Lincoln National Cemetery, the answer is no, because we can't. That's because Elwood already did that. If anybody drives in there, turns in the driveway and looks to the immediate north, there's not even a separation. It's right there. There's no buffer. There's no nothing. It's 50 feet away. And again, with regard to noise and encroachment on the cemetery, if you go to the opposite end of the cemetery, on the west end of it, that's where the honor pavilions are. That's where they have their ceremonies for the veterans and who are being interred there. And 1,400 feet away from that is the BN Freight Terminal that Elwood built next to Abraham Lincoln National Cemetery. So there's a lot of bad information. The fact of the matter is the proposal that's before this city council, as it applies to the cemetery, has nothing to do with it. At its nearest point, it is 2 miles away from it. And everybody knows that, as we made it as clear as we can in this literature, that the project is designed not to add trucks to 53. It is designed and mandated to specifically remove trucks from Route 53. We will never eliminate them because there are other developments along that state highway. But the North Point development, the traffic control plan, is designed so that trucks accessing that particular development will have to avoid 53 because there quite simply is no access to that. Are there any questions about any part of what I said or anything else regarding the project?
Mayor, may I comment?
Yeah.
My comment will be, and actually, I believe, I'm the one that called the mayor Friday. We had a very, very nice gentleman involved with Veterans Affairs. He's a Medal of Honor winner. And what caught my attention Friday in his media interview on JOL, obviously he was given information from some of the anti-North Point people, some of these people that are in charge of the group, whatever that means, the different groups, don't mind lying. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They don't mind lying and confusing people. He made this statement, come on, Joliet, and this is a fair statement for him to make with the misinformation he was provided, it would appear. Come on, Joliet, it's a $1 billion company. They should be able to at least put an easement or a buffer zone in there. Well, 2 miles is a pretty good easement or buffer zone from that area. And I thought about it, and I called you, Mayor, and I said, I just heard this interview. This poor guy has been misinformed by people closer to the situation down here. An easement is usually anywhere from 10 to 30 feet. That's an easement. We can't go any further. I mean, that's a pretty big easement. He said if such an easement existed, then it would be a good project. So he kind of endorsed it because he was dealing with misinformation. He made a statement based on that misinformation, unbeknownst to him, saying that if there was only more distance between this North Point, these same people that apparently misinformed this gentleman did not tell him that Elwood had several developments and buildings that were literally within a stone's throw. So I suggest that once we move through the process, maybe some of those most vocal people from the Manhattan area and Elwood area, maybe they should go talk to Elwood about those, and I promise I won't invade their meeting to encourage them to tear down those buildings.
Well, yeah, I guess I'd be a little guilty of the misinformation too. I said in response that the nearest point was a quarter mile away, and that it was contiguous to Midday. So I'm part of the problem, at least on this. But yeah, I don't know where some of these myths come from and why they're not being debunked, but repeated in the media. But I think anyone can take a ride down there and see for themselves that Center Point, and I think the breakdown, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, there was a huge amount of land with Joliet Arsenal, federal land. Sometime 25, 30 years ago, a decision was made to take a chunk of that and make it Medaywan. Another decision was made to take a chunk of that federal land and make it the Abraham Lincoln Cemetery. And then the same decision was made to take another chunk of that land and turn it into industrial development, which became Center Point. So that's where we're at. And these weren't decisions made, Mike, I know you were on the council 30 years ago. They weren't Joliet City Council decisions or Elwood decisions or Will County decisions. They were done at the federal level. So I suppose if anyone, I said Elwood built those buildings, and they did, but that was federal land, and that's what it was mandated for. So I guess if everyone could be clear and honest about it, maybe there'd be a different approach to this. It wouldn't be so adversarial.
It is, and as you know, Mayor, with regard to the bridge, once again, some people are saying the bridge may encroach on the cemetery. The bridge is 2,000 feet north of the cemetery, and it can't encroach on the cemetery because there's a warehouse between the cemetery and the bridge. And we all know that, unfortunately, there are trucks that do make a wrong turn into the cemetery. They're making that turn westbound off of Route 53. Well, they're not going to North Point. Number one, because North Point doesn't exist. And number two, because any North Point property is on the opposite side of the roadway. They're trying to get into these Elwood warehouses. And once Elwood closed the crossing at Walter Strawn Bridge, what did that do to all those trucks? It forced them out onto Route 53. Their only access to the warehouses they're trying to get to is Route 53 off of Route 80 in Joliet instead of Arsenal Road down Center Point Way. So, thank you.
Okay, Mayor,
Yes.
for clarity, actually, you're referring to the federal bill that was submitted. It was 22 years ago in 1998. It was sponsored in the U.S. Senate by Senator Dick Durbin. It was sponsored in the U.S. House of Representatives by Representative Jerry Weller, who was since retired. So it was in 1998 that these designations were brought forward.
All right, thank you.
Mayor, if I can request closed session this evening?
Sure.
But I have one more question for Jim. Jim, the item, we skipped past it. Under ordinance and resolutions, the last one, the ordinance abating taxes, 2020A, 6.5 million, that's the library, right?
Yes.
And 3.6 million, that's the bonding for the purchases
Vehicle
that we
replacement,
approved.
yes.
Can we move that up before we vote on, up where the Rialto is, before the actual budget vote? For
Sure.
tomorrow?
That's
Because
easy.
we're doing a separate vote on it, it wouldn't make sense to vote after the budget was approved.
Tomorrow, as we approve the agenda, you can ask for that
Okay,
to
thank
be
you.
moved. Sure.
So next is public comments. No one registered to be called, and just will verify that no one is here to speak. There are no public comments this evening. So is there a motion to go into closed session to discuss personnel, collective bargaining, land acquisition or conveyance pending or threatened litigation, after which the meeting will be adjourned?
Second.
The motion is seconded to approve. Councilwoman Gavin. Aye. Councilman Hugg.
Aye?
Councilman Landy. Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman.
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon.
Aye.
Councilman Turk.
All right.
Motion carried.